Hi, welcome back to another episode of Coldstream Rod Shop. I'm Derek Fraser. In this episode, we're going to do part 2 of the 34 Ford chassis. There's, like I said in the last episode or the episode before, depending on which sequence we show these in, we did the front and the rear suspension, and then we were asked to set the brakes and the brake pedals up. So the owner has supplied me with an original set of 34 Ford brake and clutch pedals, which will mount right there in the original position. What he wants to do is adopt hydraulic brakes. Now, one thing he doesn't want me to do is to modify these pedals. So right now there's an arm that goes on the top of here that would activate, I guess, the manual brakes at one time. So what I've got to do is basically figure out a way to connect this, which would push the pedal this way, and I actually need the plunger to go that way. So what I'm going to have to do is make like a bell crank or something here that basically pushes this forward, and have a little bell crank here that actually transfers the motion of a rod going back this way. So these are the original pedals here. I'm just going to set those on the floor and then basically mount a master cylinder like this back here. So have a rod that comes basically back with a bell crank, which then turns the motion so it pushes on this plunger. So what I've got is, to start out with, is two pieces of pipe that will slide inside of each other. So the plan is to have a hole, I'll use an existing hole here, make a bracket with I guess a tab going up here, and on the opposite side a tab going down, so that when this tab moves forward, the one on the bottom moves backwards and pushes on a plunger, which then activates the hydraulic clutch. So in this episode, I'm going to try and pull that off. I know there's other people who have done it on the internet. I've seen a few pictures. I've got a few ideas, but I'm going to make my version of it. The second thing I want to try and tackle in this is, some people have noticed from the last video, the front end on this sits really, really high after we put all the springs into it. Now that's for a couple reasons. One is that I think there's actually 7 leaves in here that were supplied with it. And then the second thing is that the eyes are on the bottom. So what I plan to do is either take this leaf apart and either reverse the arch of the spring so the eyes go on the back myself, or there's a spring shop about 5 minutes from here, and there's a gentleman there that basically does this kind of thing for a living. So hopefully we can convince him to reverse the spring here on his big hydraulic press and make it easy on me. So follow along and we'll see how it goes. All right, so we've got step 1 of using the original pedals and putting the hydraulic master cylinder in. I'm sure that there's probably a kit for this somewhere at some point in time that people made, but I just decided I was going to make my own version of it. Essentially, like I said, the way the original pedals work is that it goes this direction, so it's pulling on a rod, and we actually want a rod to push this way against the master cylinder. So, and the other condition was that the owner wanted me to try and basically use a rod that went through the original position on the cross member. So what I did, I took a piece of rod, made a homemade clevis right here, 3/8 nut and bolt on this end, then bent it through here, put a tab onto it, and then basically made this bell crank, if you want to call it. So I showed you that I had 2 pieces of a tube that slid inside of each other. So on this end, I welded a tab on a short piece of that outside tube. And then over here on the opposite side, I did the same thing, but I welded it to that small tube. So essentially now what we're doing, we've been able to reverse the direction of the arm. I may actually put some like a little grease fitting here, just drill a hole, because over on this side, the tab, actually I've made it so that there's a bolt that goes through. I can take it out, I can slide this out, The other thing I did, I made sure I put some gussets here against the frame so it's nice and steady. The last thing I have to do to get this going is here's the master cylinder and the plunger. We've got a Heim joint here, so this is going to have to mount inside the frame here. I think I'm going to have to move it a little longer than the rod is, so that way I'm going to have access to put the brake lines through the holes in the original cross member, because there's still not a lot of real estate here. So essentially I'll just make a longer one of these. It'll hook up to the Heim joint. I'm going to make a bracket here and weld it to the frame. So that's next up, but we're almost there. We've almost got her in place. So here's a better angle of the mechanism. Just kind of want to show how it works. Basically reversing the direction of the pedal and the way the bell crank works. Here's a little nut and bolt that I told you about. If I remove this, this comes off and then that slides out. So that's just a better view of it. Making progress on getting the master cylinder in. This was my first attempt of a bracket here. I got to try out my new plasma cutter and cut this round hole. It wasn't very round when I cut the first hole, so we kind of had to dress it up a little bit. But this one was a little too short. I made a longer one here, and essentially I've got the master cylinder positioned so that the two brake lines, I can still access them through either hole here in the frame. So more than likely they're going to come out of here or down and around. There's enough room. And I made a new shaft up here for the Heim joint that's going to go straight into the master cylinder. If we press it right now, it works, it flexes, but the thing is, what I'm going to have to do is next I'm going to make probably a gusset that will go from here to there, and probably one across the bottom, and kind of weld and straighten that whole bracket up, and then hopefully finish off basically the installation of the master cylinder. In front of the camera lady, the floor in the front of the car has exploded because I've taken the spring apart. My intention, like I said, was to take the main leaf down to the spring shop down the road and get it re-arced there. He said he would do it. We're going to try and do that tomorrow, but worst case, I'll come back if he's not available, and I'll just use our shop press to do it. It's just going to take a little longer, but we're going to reverse that spring. Probably take 3 leaves out of it, get her down to about 4 leaves, 4 extra leaves, and then put the front end back together again. A whole lot faster than me doing it on my press at home. So what you just saw, we were down at the spring shop. The gentleman owns a place, a little camera shy, so we just showed you recurving the spring on his big hydraulic press. As you saw, it took, I think we took a total of 4 or 5 minutes for doing it. You can recurve a spring yourself at home using one of these shop hydraulic presses. So I've got a little piece of spring here that I took out of there, and I'll just show you what I did. What I determined off of mine was that from the time I made contact with the spring, I could do 6 pumps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then that would take some of the spring out. And then I would do the same thing. So from the time I make contact, so 1, 2, 3, 6. Essentially what you do, you just keep repeating that process equally spaced and equal point. You can mark out on the spring like every 2 to 4 inches. The same thing, you keep doing that. 1, 2, 3. And you just gradually work out. So what you're doing is you just over bending it a little bit, and you slowly take the curvature out to the point that you're reversing the direction. So this one's a little stubborn, but no matter what, it's still the same. There, we'll give her 7 on that one. She's a little tougher than what the other spring was. The other practice one. So as you can see, if you do this on your press at home, it's going to take you a little while. There's a couple good videos. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. LG Customs did this not so long ago. He recurved it. We're starting to get basically the curvature out of that. On a small piece like this, it's going to take a little while. And you want to stay away from the hole. You can bend it a little bit, put a little bit of pressure where the hole is, but you risk breaking it. So again, that's what you just keep on doing with that long spring. You would work your way across, work your way back, work your way across until eventually you've over bent it and recurved it. And then what we do, before you start it, take the spring, either lay it out on the floor or lay it out on a piece of wood and have the curvature of what the spring was before you started. And then that way, as you're bending it, and as we did down at the shop, we didn't show, as we kept rebending it to reverse the eyes, we used this as a pattern to get the curve. Now, the thing with this, there was a couple things we were going to do in order to lower the front end. The first of which was reverse the eyes. So that's been accomplished. We've got the eyes on the top side of the spring now. The second thing is we were going to take 3 leaves out. Probably could take 4 out, but I'm going to take 3 out because we've got 3 on the Model A. It's not too bad. We've got 4 over on the 32 pickup. I think this vehicle is going to weigh about the same as what our 32 pickup was, and 4 leaves is actually quite nice. It's got a pretty decent rise, so we're going to start with that. But as a result of taking these leaves out, we have to put a spacer underneath to make up the difference for the clamps when we put it on the car. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to put this all back together again, see where we sit for the ride heights, and we'll show you the finished product here shortly. Well, I've got the spring back in, and just kind of as I thought, it's sitting much nicer than before, reversing the eyes, taking the leaves out, putting that spacer in underneath the clamp, and clamping everything in place. We're sitting right probably where we want to. It could sit a little bit lower, but there's still lots of travel here. And also the other check that I did was the shocks will actually fit up to the mounts. I didn't show doing the shocks because essentially the upper shocks just bolt in here underneath the fender supports, and then there's really nothing to do except for just to install them to show you. Then I finished off the gussets over here on the master cylinder. So I put a gusset on the top and the bottom, and right now there is no flex there. I've got good movement into it. There's nothing binding. There's nothing flexing. I'm happy with that. So that's the kind of the end of this video for this project. The project is not completely done. We still have a few more things left to do. I'm not sure if next week we'll be finishing off some of the details on this or finally getting over to doing stuff on the 40 Plymouth. We've got stopped twice already, unfortunately, because I had to wait for parts. There's some work done on it. So next week, please tune in and see what we're up to. It's either a 34 Ford chassis or a 40 Plymouth, or who knows, maybe something else will come our way during the week. But that's it for this video. Please like, share, tag, and subscribe. And of course, please send me your comments. I'd love to hear from you. And I'll see you next week. Everybody take care.